get started for today. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today for our Global Employability Expert Series. Today I'm really excited to introduce you to our presenter. We're joined by Kim Richmond, who is the principal of Kim Richmond Marketing and Communications. She is a very experienced and accomplished marketing and public relations professional and has worked with a lot of really exciting brands like FAO Schwartz, Sears, and Kraft Foods. And today she's going to be spilling 5 secrets in order to ace every interview. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Kim.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. And I really am hoping that, I'm just wondering, I meant to ask Jessica, so do we have any rock stars on the line? Any rock stars? I'm hoping we've got some rock stars on the line, because you really have to be a rock star to be the one that gets the job or the internship. And the interview is the perfect place to do that. So some people think that interviewing is easy, right? Because you like to talk, you're good with people, you're good with interacting. But I'm going to tell you something. Interviewing is harder than it looks, because whoever is interviewing you has done it a lot more than you have. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. So that's why today we're going to cover 5 secrets to acing every interview. So we're going to talk about some things you've probably heard them before, but we're going to say, but we're going to peel them back so you can get the secrets. So let's talk about the first of the 5 secrets, okay? The first secret, do your homework. So you probably say, I've heard that before. Do your homework. Do research about the company or the organization that you're interviewing with, and do research about the person or people with whom you're interviewing, okay? So that's really important. So you go, I know how to do that. Yes, no, go to the website, Google them, take a look at press releases, go to the person's LinkedIn, understand all the things that you have going on. But let me peel back a little bit and give you some more secrets that rest under this idea of doing your homework. So here's a secret. Whatever company or organization you're interviewing with, be the customer, okay? So that means call the 800 number, or go to the store, or download the app, or ask for further information online. Now, don't be afraid, like, I can't do that because I'm not a customer or whatever. No, do that so that you understand what the customer experience is. You don't have to tell them, but you want to make sure that you let them know that you went through the process like a customer, okay? So I always say the first secret under do your homework is be the customer. The next secret underneath this first one is have an I know statement, okay? An I know statement. I know you're having a grand opening. I know you're going through an acquisition. I know you're consolidating this. I know you're expanding this. So make sure you let your interviewer know in a very subtle way that you've done your homework. I know you're going through this acquisition. How do you think that will impact the company culture? Okay, perfect way to let people know that you've done your homework. So that's a really good way to let people know. And then another thing under do your homework, I kind of put this here, which is always confirm your interview. So it sounds like a little thing, but just a little email back to the person that set up the interview to say, I just wanted to confirm the interview so that, it's tomorrow at 11 or whatever it is. I actually had a student that went all the way to New York one time on an interview that was set up and got there and the person was out of town. So always confirm the interview. You would rather make sure that you find any glitches first. So this whole idea about doing your homework is kind of like not a secret, but it's the secrets underneath there. Be the customer, have an I know statement, confirm the interview. So that's the first thing, do your homework. Second thing, prep for questions that you'll be asked. Now, I know that people probably think, oh, I can't prepare for an interview. I don't know what they're going to ask. No, 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 no. You might not know the exact questions, but you'll be interested to know that you can and should rehearse for an interview. Let's talk about what that means. So, what you should think about is the end of the interview. What do you want your interviewer or interviewers to say about you? In other words, what did you leave behind for them? So that's your brand story. So what you should do then is work backwards and say, okay, what are the stories that I want to tell them that will give them what it is that they need to know and will help them remember me? So that is the most important thing under preparing. So let's talk about a couple of questions. Does anybody know what's the most asked question in a job interview? Most asked question. Absolutely. Most asked questions is, so tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself. So the answer to that is what? That someone said, yes, talk about yourself and your experience. Yes. But make sure you're prepared for this. So there's something called an elevator pitch, okay, which is really a condensed version of your background, who you are, what you've done in the past to deliver value, and what you want to do. And the secret to answering questions in a job interview is to be sure that your answers are short and concise. Here's why. We speak at about 125 words a minute. We listen at about 400 to 500 words a minute. So what that means is our minds are always jumping ahead. So when we're nervous, we talk a little too much. And if we talk too much, the person is already on to the next thing in their head. So make sure you rehearse answers to questions, that they're short, concise, and they lead somebody to the next question. What is the next question you want them to ask you about yourself? Okay, so they're probably going to start off with, tell me about yourself. Don't start with where you were born. Have a nice, short, concise elevator pitch. So you don't have experience. What's the best way to answer? What a great question. So someone has asked that as students, you don't really have experience to talk about. What's the best way to answer that? Well, first of all, you have amazing experience. So you are a student. You are engaged in learning, which is a huge, huge thing. You may have had part-time jobs in the past. You may have had internships. So let's talk about how you do that. Tell me about yourself is, I've worked part-time to help pay for my college degree. I'm a junior at XYZ, and my goal is to become ABC, okay? So that you can get somebody into the next question. Nobody expects you to have like tons of experience. Nobody expects that of you, right? But what they want from you is, what is your brand story? Okay, your brand story. People want to hire you. They're going to train you to do what they want you to do. What they want to know is, what have you done outside the classroom? What have you done above and beyond your classes? They expect you to go to class and do well, but what have you gotten involved in? What have you volunteered for? What courses have you taken online? What kinds of social media have you done for companies or volunteer organizations? Okay, so don't underestimate the experience you have. And when someone says, tell me about yourself, they're either doing it for one of two reasons. One is they didn't prepare for the interview, so it's kind of like they're trying to kind of get anchored. Or number two, they're trying to see how well you can tell your brand story. Either way, you need to rehearse how you're going to answer that question in a short, concise way. So I see that we have, I have to laugh because I see a question that when they ask you, what are your weaknesses? That is exactly my next point, which is a common interview question. Tell me about your strengths. Again, choose one or two things that you talk about quickly. It's good to tell a story, give an example, and tell me about your weaknesses. Okay, this is a great question because You want to be honest, but not too honest, okay? What you want to say is things like, one of the things is that when I get involved in things, I tend to take on more than I can handle. So what I've learned through my last semester is I've learned how to communicate better so that I can pace my progress. I've learned to do that with my professors, okay? So things like that. So weaknesses, don't ever say, no, I don't have any weaknesses, okay? That's just not credible. But do choose something that you do think is, is something that is a development area for you. But again, always bring it around to something positive, okay? Does that help? Okay, so now let's talk about another obvious question you'll get on an interview. Why do you want to work here? Okay, why do you want to work here is a very common question. That's not a general answer. That's because you've done homework on the company or organization. You want to bring that back to how you can deliver value and how you can make a difference there at that, based on what they want to accomplish. So look at the company's mission statement, look at the types of things they've done in the past. So that's a really common question, and too many people answer that in a generic way. Well, I feel like I could learn a lot here. No, no one's gonna, they expect you to learn. People expect you to learn when you take a job or an internship. It's what you can bring to the company. So when you're looking for a job, it's not about you, it's about them, right? So always make sure and bring it back to what they want to accomplish, what's important to them. So why do you want to work here is a really important question. You may also get what's called behavioral questions. Things like, give me an example of a time when you worked on a team and things didn't work out as you planned. Or give me an example of a project that you worked on that didn't start out very well. Okay, so be prepared in your preparation. Think about, again, stories, examples of things that you want to tell, and I promise you, once you do that, you can answer any question you get on a job interview. Okay, so we have a question here is, what if they ask the question, oh, wait a minute. I just saw this other open question just a minute. How can we answer when they ask us, what did you do during this pandemic? Well, I think, you know what, I think that everybody's kind of challenged with this. And I think this is a perfect time to shine. This is when you say things like, this is when I've really had to use my creativity. And what I've done is I've done some, I'm gonna make this up. I've done online networking. I've also kept up with my classmates and my professors. And I've started to do some online courses or exploring or doing more reading, industry reading, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the idea of taking something and demonstrating your creativity and how you've, kind of not use this as limits, but use this as a challenge will really help you. I think that that's a really good thing to do. So think about things like that. How would you answer that question on a job interview? And when you have spare time, you know what? Kind of do something. You could say, for example, I've really ramped up my social media efforts and I started a blog. What a great answer. I'd be like, wow, I would hire you, right? So I think thinking about things like that will help you. And by the way, my background is marketing, but no matter what area you're in, starting a blog demonstrates your commitment. It's your writing skills, and you don't even have to write a lot. You can make it be a video blog. You can make it just be a short Tumblr blog. But doing a blog and then sharing it on social media really demonstrates a lot. And by the way, you can make that an entry on your resume as well. And so we have a question, is it preferable to answer each question with a story? So stories are really great, particularly when you want to make a point. Here's what I like to do. I like to answer the question, and then give an example. Now, in an interview, you might not have an opportunity to give an example for every question that's asked, but answering with a story helps your brand story. That's why when we talked about do your homework and do your preparation, you want to think about what you want them to remember at the end of the interview. And that's part of your brand story. But stories definitely help things stick in people's minds for sure. Okay. And again, don't be tripped up by those behavioral questions. Give me an example of. Think through all of your examples, think through all of the challenges you've had, the team projects you've worked on, the class projects you've worked on, all the things that you've done, volunteering, part-time jobs. I promise you, you have lots of stories to tell that reinforces what it is you want to communicate. Let's see here, we've got a couple of other questions, which is, let's see. How to ask how to ask the interviewer a couple of questions in the amount of time, but not asking too many. Okay, I'm actually going to come to that. That's going to be my point number 4. If we can come back to that one, I really like that one. Another challenging question I find myself, which is why should we hire you instead of others? Well, we can do research about the company. We can't do research about the other candidates. What's the most effective way to answer such a question? That's a great question. So here's the thing. You're exactly right. Don't worry about the other candidates. You are the only candidate in your mind, and make it true in their mind. And what I'm going to say to you is, it actually leads me into it's your doing your homework, preparing for your questions. And I'm going to go into my secret number 3, because I think this is the perfect way to stand out from all the other candidates. And that is show samples of your work. Okay, show samples of your work. So when you go onto a job interview, you should always bring with you samples of your work. So whatever work, and it can be class work. So I'm going to show, it can be class work, something like this. Okay, and you can have your pages tab so that you can actually go to a page and talk about a particular thing. You can talk about, the SWOT analysis, or you can talk about the personas, or you can talk about the budget. Okay, so something like this. If you have a class project, if you submitted it electronically, don't worry about it. Let me just drop my papers. Don't worry about it. You can still do it. You just print it out. You can bring a portfolio like this if you're interviewing in person. Okay, have some samples of your work. 3 to 5 samples of your work. That's all you need. 3 to 5 projects, examples of social media, volunteer efforts, whatever it is that you want to reinforce. Okay, if you are interviewing online, you absolutely can share samples of your work in an online portfolio. So there's several websites: Wix, Weebly, Yola, Behance, any of those. So you can switch over and show a couple of samples of your work. So if you want to stand out versus any other candidate, you make sure you bring samples of your work or an idea. So here's another simple way to do that. This is actually something that I met with the president of the college where I teach. And I just took a PowerPoint slide and I put it onto an illustration board, and it was so effective. So I was able to say, here are some thoughts I have on this topic. When you do that, they don't care about anybody else. They only want you, because you've taken the time to do that. So how can I control myself when I'm nervous? Because sometimes I mess up when I'm worried. Of course, we all do. We all are nervous. So here's what we have to do. Rehearse, prepare, will bring down your nerves. And also, as soon as you start that interview, I always say, let that energy, open up your big toe and let all your nerves run out. And you take a deep breath and you put a smile on your face. A smile will go so far when you are nervous. And you know what? Just remember, you're having a conversation. Almost every interviewer just really wants to get to know you, because what people want to know is, are you going to fit? Are you going to fit culturally? That's what they want to know. Are you going to fit with everybody in the company? So don't be worried. Don't be worried. Don't go into a job interview and think you're worried. Go in prepared. Bring samples of your work. Think about talking about that, and then you will not. You'll be the one that they remember and they want to have. So that was the secret number 3. Show samples of your work. So I say 3 to 5 samples. If it's in person, I like seeing a hard copy portfolio. Hard copies, clean copies, not graded copies, clean copies. If it's virtual, show a website or samples. If you have long form writing, like a 10-page paper, do excerpts from the paper. If you're applying for any position that requires writing, have writing samples, or bring an idea or two, again, written out for the company. A PowerPoint slide is so powerful. I can't even tell you how that will, it doesn't even matter if it's the right idea, it matters that you took the time. Okay, so that was big idea number 3, the secret, show samples of your work. So let's talk about, because I want to make sure that I answer this question about asking questions, because the secret number 4 is be prepared with questions to ask. Never, 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 when someone says, do you have any questions, never say no. Okay, even if all of your questions have been answered, even if you interviewed with 6 people or 12 people and everybody answered your question, never say never. So here's the secret that I always say. You're not going to have a lot of time for questions. You might have lots of questions. Don't ask questions about what are the hours or blah, blah. Don't ask those kinds of questions on an interview. You can always ask those to HR after the fact. Here's the kinds of questions you should ask. You should ask, if you only have time for one question, you're feeling like what the time is like, here's the best interview question to ask. How will success be measured in this position? Okay, so that's letting them know that you expect accountability, that you want to be measured, and that you think that that's important to yourself and to the organization. So that is a great question. If you don't ask any other question, that's a great question. Here are some other questions that you might have ready, and again, based on the time, and some of that just has to go with feel. You know, when it feels like it's not very much time, which is what the question is how do you make sure you're not asking too many questions? Usually you can tell from body language. Usually you can tell from the time when people get on. If it's a half hour, you can tell if it's getting close to the end. But here's another really great question. Describe the company culture in one word. So the common question is describe the company culture. So that's for the ordinary candidates. But when you say describe the company culture in one word, it really makes people think. So make them think. And if you interview with 5 different people, ask them that same question, and they'll really want to know the answer. I always save that question until the end, like when because if I'm either interviewing with a CEO or I'm working on a project, I always meet with the CEO last. We usually meet with the hiring manager last. And I always ask him or her that question. And then I ask that question to all of your people. And they're always very intrigued. They always say, oh, what did they say? Right? So now you're bringing insight to them and you're gathering insight. Another great question to ask is, looking ahead to next year on July 29th, or whatever date it is, what is the most important thing that this person in this job will have accomplished? Okay, so again, you're looking forward, you want to understand what their expectations are, and you're talking about accomplishments. And then the other side of it is to ask, what's the most important thing this person will accomplish in the first 90 days? So that's a good way to kind of ask that question. The last question that you always ask on an interview, always, here's a great secret for you, last question. What is your process and timeline for hiring? Okay, so tell me a little bit about the rest of the process and what's your timeline. That will tell you when you can follow up. If they say, well, we're going to be doing our interviews for the next 3 weeks, then you say, great, can I touch base in 3 weeks? So you want to make sure and establish when you can follow up if by any chance you don't hear back from them, and do follow up. Follow up more than once. Okay, you don't have to stalk them, you don't have to be a pest, but follow up multiple times will help set you apart. So I see we have a question. For someone who's already working, I found them asking, what's the expected salary, or what salary would you make a move to our company? How can we answer that professionally and winning the highest pay? Okay, that's a great question. So first of all, always try to avoid answering that question. Okay, you want them to fall in love with you first, right? So here's a great answer to that question. Well, what I'm looking for is the right opportunity. And I know that the compensation is more than salary. Okay, so compensation may include things like time off, may include things like benefits, might be health insurance, whatever. So you're going to say things like, it's looking for the right opportunity, and compensation is more than salary. So if they press you and they really want salary, then what you should have ready is a range. Okay, a range of salary. And also say, before I give you this, I want to make sure we both understand that compensation is more than just salary. So there are a lot of things that go around into the compensation piece. I mean, you may end up with more vacation time or whatever. So keep that open also when you do negotiating. Okay, so that's a great question, that salary question, but you have to be ready for it. But again, try not to answer it as far along in the process as you can. So we've talked about 4 secrets already, which is the whole idea of doing your homework, prepping for the questions you're going to ask, showing samples of your work, being prepared with questions. And now we're going to talk about secret number 5, which is dress for success. Now, I know you've all heard this before. What's the most important thing you can wear on a job interview? Okay, I'm going to share with you. Everybody should remember this. The most important thing, and the thing you should always wear in a job interview, is a smile. Okay, it helps you whether you're interviewing virtually, in person, or by phone. If it's by phone, you make sure they hear the smile in your voice. You make sure they feel your energy, because that's what people are trying to assess. Okay, make sure that comes through. But it's always better to dress up, not down, even if you are interviewing in a very casual environment. Okay, so gentlemen, a tie is always appropriate. You can always take it off. Okay, ladies, make sure that you're wearing a dress, something long sleeve or 3/4 sleeve is much more appropriate. If you're doing this virtually, dress from top to bottom. Okay, it will make you feel more professional, and just in case you have to get up during that webinar for some reason, you want to make sure you're fully dressed. Okay, if it's virtual, make sure you choose your background carefully. Make sure you look professional. Choose a room with natural light. Okay, natural light is best. Overhead lighting is the worst. If you don't have natural light, then you should put a lamp in front of you so that it gives you the softer light. But overhead lighting is actually the worst. It's better to use your laptop than your phone, and make sure you're, just because you have a little bit more control, turn off your phone and make sure your laptop is fully charged. Okay, so wear a smile, big secret. Okay, and dress up, not down. So, and again, even if you have a phone interview, dress up, feel professional. So we have a question. What if they asked me, if you were your supervisor and asked you to do something you disagreed with, what would you do? Well, I think that generally that's an interesting question. I would say that definitely I would want to make sure and have a conversation and make sure that there was understanding about what was to be accomplished, because I would always want to make sure and accomplish what the goal was that was set out to be done. Now, sometimes in the working world, someone will say, you have to do it this way. your idea is to do it this way. Sometimes we do it the way that we're told, and that way we earn the right to say, you know, next time when I want to do it this way, or we learn so that when we're in the supervisor role, we understand how to listen better. So sometimes that's said because people are not good listeners or they're insecure. So if somebody is insecure, they want to know that someone's going to do what they want. Now, if it's ever a breach of ethics, I would make sure and say, if it were unethical, I would definitely not do it. Okay, so pretty straightforward, but we're not always going to agree in business. And sometimes we're going to do it somebody else's way, and sometimes we're going to do it our way. What I've learned in the business world is that you earn the right, but you earn the respect. People come to you and they ask you what's the best way to do it. Okay, so that takes a little bit of time. So we covered our 5 points. Do your homework, prep for questions, show samples of your work, be prepared with questions, dress for success, and I'm going to give you one bonus secret. This secret is the best. Say thank you. Okay, 2 most powerful words in the world, thank you. Whenever you interview with someone, send them an email thank you as soon as possible. Within 24 hours is best. Send an individual email to each person you interviewed with. Thank them for their time. Mention something that you talked about and include a link to an article or a video that relates to something you talked about. It's a really great way to demonstrate active listening, okay? So when you asked about, you know, how would you handle it if you didn't agree with something, when you show somebody that you, again, are going beyond the interview, it's awesome. So send your email thank you, and then you should have thank you notes. Send a handwritten thank you note. I know in today's world of snail mail, that doesn't always work. If it's a job you really, really, really want, FedEx your thank you note. You can't afford to do that for everybody, but if it's a job you really want or an internship you really want, everybody opens FedExes, okay? So that's the best way to do that. But always, and by the way, it's okay to say thank you twice. Thank you in the email, and then thank you with a handwritten note. So again, thank them for their time. Mention something that you talked about, could be the same thing, and then say you're looking forward to next steps. Okay, so that's some secrets. There's lots of little secrets in there, and those little things make such a huge difference. So let's see here. I have another point here, another challenging question I find myself. Why should we, oh yeah, we talked about that. Why should we hire you despite others? I'm telling you, if you bring a portfolio, they don't care about anyone else. They really don't. So I hope that this helps you think a little differently about interviewing, because what I want to say is it goes back to exactly that question, which is there are so many candidates that you want to stand out. So things like really doing your homework, really preparing for those questions, bringing samples of your work or an idea for the company, being prepared with questions, even if you only end up asking one, dressing for success, and that includes your smile, and then saying thank you. Oh, you have no idea. They sound so little, but they make such a big impression. And that way you can be the rock star that gets the job or internship you want. And by the way, I just want to say this, which is always, even if you think it's a job or an internship that you don't want, always go all the way through the process, because what you want to get is the offer. You want to be the one that says no to an offer. But you know what, if you kind of just like drop off along the way, you'll never get an offer. So get the offer. You never know, you might end up taking it. So go all the way through to the offer and then make your decision about whether you'll take it or not take it. And then that could be another webinar about how to negotiate a job offer. So what kinds of questions can I answer for you about interviewing? Because we've had some great questions in here. Any other questions about interviewing? Phone interviews, we didn't spend a lot of time on them, but phone interviews are hard because you don't get face-to-face contact. So make sure when you interview by phone, again, that people can hear and see your energy, but also have your resume out in front of you, have your questions out in front of you, have everything laid out in front of you so that you can refer to it. So that your objective with a phone interview is to make sure that you can get to the next level. So here's a question. What do you think when people ask, do you have any reservations about my application? So I assume you're asking that as a job applicant. I don't like that question. I don't like it because it puts the interviewer on the spot. So interviewers don't like to divulge how they feel at the time because they have other interviews. They might have an interview right after yours, for example. So what your objective is in an interview is not to get feedback. Your objective is to make them fall in love with you. Remember, it's all about them, not about you. So I think the questions about the company, the future of the company, accountability are much better questions to ask than what kind of reservation. So it's just kind of changing your mindset about how you think about an interview. Again, if you're thinking about them, you would want to ask them a question about, what does the perfect candidate look like? That's a better question. So here's another question. Can we ask for the interviewer information before the interview? Absolutely. That is such a great question. Yes, you should ask. What is the name and the title of the people you'll be interviewing with? Now, sometimes people will say, we're not really sure. Sometimes people join that were not planned or vice versa. But you can definitely ask for that, and you should. You should know about who you're going to talk with. But again, always be prepared that it might be somebody different. They might have gotten called into a meeting or whatever. So just be flexible. And if you are in person, always bring extra copies, hard copies of your resume, because somebody who was not on the interview list may be asked to join, and that way you can give them a copy of your resume. What other questions can I answer? Anything? As a job seeker, if I've applied for job offers, sometimes it happens, one of those companies call out of the blue. Yeah, that's for sure. How to maintain such a phone call? Well, it's hard to be prepared for all those job offers. Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that you want to do is be able to ask questions. And that's, so if somebody calls you and they say, I'm calling from XYZ company, blah, 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 it is perfectly fine to say, you know what, I just grabbed a pencil. I'd like to jot this down. Can you tell me again what company and position this is? It's perfectly fine. I think that's perfectly fine. Again, ask questions. Don't feel like you can't, and you want to make sure that you're prepared, and especially if you're being called in for an interview. So. And by the way, it's fine if you say to them, I'd like to be prepared for this. Can you send me a copy of the job description? I just want to make sure I have your copy in front of me. Okay. Oh, here's a great question. What if they asked me a difficult question that I couldn't answer or couldn't think of a good answer? You know what? That's fine. When you get a question, it's okay to take a minute. Say, wow, that's a good question. And think about, you give a second or two, and don't be concerned that you can't answer a question. And you know what? Something that you might say is, could we come back to that question? It's not a problem. Everybody understands that there's nerves that go on in an interview. So don't be concerned about that. It's just as if you were watching somebody on TV. When they make a mistake, they just keep going. And there's a lot of mistakes made with live TV, but you just keep going. So don't get tripped up on it. You just keep going. Just like in the Olympics in figure skating. If they fall, they get up and they keep going. So don't be concerned about being asked a question that's hard that you didn't answer right. No, that will not detract from you in any way, shape, or form. What great questions we have. This is a great group. Let's see here. They ask irrelevant questions, maybe to capture your reaction. My personal experience, sometimes I laugh if I don't know how to reply. So that's an interesting question. So if they're asking you a question that you think is irrelevant, they may think is relevant because it helps them see kind of like a perspective, maybe being caught, I don't want to say off guard, but you know, again, always answer the questions to the best of your ability, or if you don't understand the question, ask them a question about the question. So I think that that's important to make sure and be respectful of the fact that they may be asking you a question that doesn't seem like it makes sense, but to them it may make perfect sense. Okay, so sometimes in interviews they'll ask, like, if you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be? Now that might sound like a, you know, kind of like an irrelevant question, but what they want is they want to know what kind of analogy you would make about yourself. It's a different way of asking that question. So always answer them, be respectful, be open-minded, and yeah, if you want to put a little humor on it, that's fine. But laughing is a hard thing. You just want to do that in relationship to humor. So let's see here. What could be done if I received an unexpected call for a job interview while busy doing other commitments? Well, that's a great question. So so here's the thing. We have to be flexible for a job interview. It's okay to say, you know, Tuesday at 2 doesn't work for me. Is there any time earlier in the day, or is there any time on Wednesday or later in the week? But you can't be completely busy the whole time, because then they say, well, you know what, we're moving on to the next one. So it's perfectly fine, though, to say that if they say, you know, Tuesday at 11 a.m. and you can't make that, to suggest another time. But 2 or 3 times after that, they might say, you know what, we can't make this happen. Okay. So I think we have time for, let's see here, maybe one more question. I hope everybody feels really much more prepared. I promise you, when you do the things that we talked about today, you will shine on an interview. And really, all you want to do on an interview, the reason they're interviewing you is to get to know you, okay? And you want to get to know them. So look at it that way, but go in prepared. Always be professional. Never let down your guard. Just always know that that's what you're doing. And the more often you interview, the better you get at it. So when you have those other commitments, change them around, because even if you don't want the job, interview experience is great experience. You can't get it any other way. Okay? So with that, I want to thank everybody for your time today. I really, really enjoyed this, and I encourage you, if you'd like to reach out to me, Kim Richmond, I'm on LinkedIn. So please feel free to reach out to me, and I want to wish you all the best of luck in all of your interviews, because when you do these things, you can get any job you want.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was amazing and such important information for all of our interns. I think it was so helpful and relevant to them, as they will soon be, or maybe have already started interviewing for full-time positions after they graduate. So thank you again, that was great. And to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us today. Check your emails, because we'll be sending out information about our next Global Employability Expert Series, which will be on August 12th, and we'll be joined by Mitch Lowe, who was the former CEO of MoviePass and an executive at Netflix. So it should be a really exciting topic. He'll be discussing how innovation affects leadership. So check your emails for information on that. And again, thank you so much, Kim, for joining us today.
Thank you all.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.